Lu Wantang and I got our marriage license last week. The wedding wasn't a big affair. We booked a small hall at the Lanting Hotel on the east side of the city, with only the closest relatives and friends, no more than 60 people in total. Lu Wantang walked down the red carpet, in that white satin wedding dress, and my heart pounded so hard I thought it might burst. Her eyes were red, but her smile was especially beautiful. We went to Sanya for our honeymoon, 5 days in total. Our flight landed this afternoon. Wantang said she had an emergency meeting at the company, so she had the driver take her straight to the Jiang Yubai Group headquarters. I returned to our new home at Bay alone, figuring I would unpack and cook some congee for her when she got back tonight. I was squatting in the walk-in closet unpacking a suitcase when the doorbell rang.
A man stood at the door.
He looked to be around 35 or 36, about 7 or 8 years older than me. He was wearing a dark gray custom-made suit, the metal cufflinks reflecting cold light in the hallway. His hair was combed immaculately, and his whole being exuded a refined sense of pressure. He wore an antique bronze ring on his right index finger. It didn't look like ordinary jewelry, more like some kind of status identifier.
I didn't know this man.
But the way he looked at me was like looking at a fool who had been kept in the dark.
Mr.
Jiang Yubai, is it? He accurately stated my name, the corner of his mouth slightly upturned. That curve wasn't quite a smile, more of a condescending scrutiny. I am Cheng Yanbei. I instinctively blocked the doorway, not intending to let him in. The security at Bay was considered top tier in Cloud City. For a stranger to find his way directly to my front door meant he had either tailgated a resident or owned a property in this complex himself.
What can I do for you, Mr.
Cheng? I tried to remain polite, but my grip on the suitcase handle tightened a few notches. Cheng Yanbei unhurriedly pulled out his phone from his inner suit pocket, tapped the screen a few times, flipped to a photo and turned the screen to face me. I glanced at it. It was a marriage certificate photo, red background, a half-body shot of 2 people. The woman in the photo leaned her head towards the man beside her, her brows gentle, a tiny mole just below her right eye. That position, that mole's shape and size, I knew them all too well. The woman in the photo was Lu Wantang, and the man beside her was this Cheng Yanbei standing right in front of me. You may need to get reacquainted with your new wife, Cheng Yanbei said, putting his phone away. His tone was as flat as if he was commenting on the weather. Lu Wantang, or should I say Shen Tingxi, is my lawful wife. She and I registered our marriage last May. It's been over a year now. My head buzzed, but I kept my expression neutral. My grandfather taught me when I was young, don't panic when things happen. The one who panics first loses.
I am the only grandson of the Jiang family.
My grandfather, Jiang Heading, was one of the first in Cloud City to build a business from scratch. He grew Jiang Yubai Group from a small building materials factory into a diversified conglomerate, now worth over 30 billion. He didn't leave me much, but he taught me one thing. Never let others see your cards before you've seen the whole deck.
Miss
Cheng, I don't know who you are or what you're trying to pull with this photo, I said, taking half a step back as if to close the door.
But if you don't leave now, I'll call security.
Cheng Yanbei smiled, leaning sideways against the doorframe as comfortably as if he were in his own home.
He pointed a finger at the phone in my pocket.
Why don't you give your wife a call?
Right here in front of me, on speakerphone. As he said this, a glint of something I couldn't quite read flashed in his eyes. Not smugness, not provocation, but more of a certainty. A certainty that once this call was made, a specific result he wanted would follow. My hand had already slipped into my pocket and was gripping my phone. Honestly, I didn't want to make this call, not because I believed what Cheng Yanbei had said, but because this man had a deeply unsettling air of control about him. It felt like he had calculated every step, just waiting for me to walk right into the trap he had set. But if I didn't call, it would look like I had something to hide. I had known Lu Wantang for 8 months and dated her for 6. I knew exactly what kind of person she was. Clearer than anyone. She got up at 6:30 every morning to make me breakfast. Knowing my stomach was bad, she would try every possible way to make soup for me. She had told me all her experiences, how her parents had passed away when she was young, and how she had struggled alone in Cloud City. How could a woman like that possibly deceive me? I pulled out my phone, found the top pinned contact in my address book, wifey, and pressed the dial button, simultaneously switching on the speakerphone. Ring, ring, ring. It rang 3 times before someone picked up on the other end.
Hello?
Hubby, I just got to the company.
What's up?
Lu Wantang's voice came through the speaker, still that soft, sweet tone. The moment I heard her voice, a huge weight lifted from my chest. I stared at Cheng Yanbei and spoke into the phone.
Wifey. There's a man at our door.
Says his name is Cheng Yanbei.
Says has your husband.
Silence on the other end of the line.
Not the silence of a dropped signal.
I could hear Lu Wantang's breathing, the faint sound of people walking in the background, but she didn't say a word.
1 second. 2. 3. The silence stretched for a full 5 seconds.
In the 8 months I'd been with Lu Wantang, I'd never seen her stay silent for this long. She had incredibly quick reflexes, always able to pick up on any topic immediately. It was her personality, and also her skill. During those 5 seconds, the smile on Cheng Yanbei's face slowly, bit by bit, widened like ink spreading on rice paper. His eyes stared at my phone screen, and the curve of his lips seemed inexpressibly eerie in the shadows of the hallway.
Wantang?
I couldn't help but call out. Finally, a voice came through the phone. Lu Wantang's breathing was clearly uneven. Her voice was very low, as if she was hiding from someone. "Hubby, listen to me. Don't believe him." Then the call cut off. It wasn't hung up. It was cut off. The urgent, busy tone came from the receiver. Beep, 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 piercing my eardrums. I immediately pressed redeal. It rang twice and went straight to voicemail. I tried again. The phone was switched off. My hand holding the phone was sweating, but my expression remained steady. I couldn't show any panic in front of this man, regardless of whether the marriage certificate photo had shown me was real, regardless of what that interrupted call from Lu Wantang meant. At least for now, the man standing at my doorstep was him, and I was the legal owner of this door. Cheng Yanbei put his phone back into his inner pocket, straightened his cuffs, and took a step back. The light in the elevator lobby cast shifting patches of light and shadow on his face. His face, which could have been considered quite handsome, appeared particularly sinister under this light. "Mr.
Jiang, I mean no harm," he said.
I simply believe a man shouldn't live his life in a fog, not knowing who he's actually married to.
Don't you agree?
He turned and walked toward the elevator, his leather shoes making crisp sounds on the marble floor. When he reached the elevator entrance, he stopped, turned sideways, and glanced back at me. "Oh, and if you're free tomorrow, come by Dijiang Capital," he said, pulling a black business card with gold embossing from his card holder and placing it on top of the nearby parcel locker. "I'll show you some things. After you see them, we can discuss how to settle this debt." The elevator doors opened, and he walked in. Before they closed, Cheng Yanbei looked at me through the narrowing gap and said one last thing. "Jiang Yubai, if your grandfather were still alive, he wouldn't have let you marry this woman." The elevator doors closed. The red numbers above the door jumped down from the 13th floor. 12, 11, 10. I stood rooted to the spot. The hallway was quiet, only the sound of the central air conditioning fan remaining. After a long while, I picked up the business card and looked at it. Dijiang Capital Holding Group, Cheng Yanbei, Chairman and CEO. The address was the 48th floor of Dijiang Tower, Financial Street. I had heard the name Dijiang Capital before. They were behind the largest hostile takeover in Cloud City 3 years ago. The owner of the medical equipment company that was acquired jumped off a building. It made the headlines of the social news back then. And what sent a deeper chill down my spine was that the new energy merger and acquisition project Jiang Yu Group had started engaging with in the 4th quarter of last year. The name at the top of the competitor bidders list was Dijiang Capital. Cheng Yanbei showing up at my door was definitely not just about a woman. I closed the door, walked back to the living room, and sat down on the sofa. 3 minutes. I gave myself 3 minutes to digest everything that had just happened. After 3 minutes, I picked up my phone.
I didn't keep calling Lu Wantang.
Instead, I dialed another number. "Hey, Lao Zhou, it's me.
I need you to look into someone.
Cheng Yanbei, from Dijiang Capital. I need everything on him from the last 3 years." Also, I paused, my throat a little dry. Check for me if Lu Wantang, before marrying me, had any dealings with Dijiang Capital whatsoever. After hanging up, I leaned back against the sofa and looked up at the crystal chandelier Lu Wantang had picked out on the ceiling. The light refracted into countless tiny specks of light, falling on the walls, the floor, the coffee table, like a dense, intricate web.
I didn't know if I was already a fish in that web.
But one thing I was certain of, Cheng Yanbei thought he was the one casting the net.
He was wrong. The Jiang family has been in industry for 3 generations.
We've seen all kinds of storms.
If he wants to play, I'll play with him to the end. The phone screen suddenly lit up. It was a text message from an unknown number. I opened it. It was just one line. "Mr. Jiang, the marriage certificate at your home." It might also be fake. The sender's note read, "Shen Tingxi Household Registration Information Inquiry, Cloud City Public Security Bureau, Archives Division." My hand froze above the screen.
Shen Tingxi.
Cheng Yanbei had just said that Lu Wantang should be called by this name. Outside the window, night was falling. The street lamps in the Billionaires complex lit up one after another, their warm yellow lights spreading over the leaves of the plane trees. This should have been the first ordinary night for Lu Wantang and me after our honeymoon. But this man named Cheng Yanbei, with just a door's distance and a single photo, had driven a crack through all the trust I had built over 28 years. And what unsettled me even more, what exactly was hidden behind the unfinished sentence Lu Wantang couldn't finish before that call was cut off.
I read that text message 3 times and didn't reply.
Before figuring out who the sender was and what their purpose was, any response could become a weapon handed directly to someone else. Lao Zhao's side hadn't responded yet, so I decided to do what I could right now. I stood up from the sofa, walked into the master bedroom, and opened Lu Wantang's wardrobe. She didn't have a lot of clothes, but each piece was arranged neatly, sorted by color. Even the spacing between the hangers was almost uniform. She was a bit of a perfectionist, something I had always known. I searched through everything but found nothing unusual. The jewelry in the drawers, the skincare products, the receipt stubs, all were spotlessly clean. So clean they seemed less like traces left by a living person and more like an exhibit. Living people always leave behind useless things, expired coupons, forgotten delivery receipts, shopping receipts, casually stuffed into a bag. But there were absolutely none of these among Lu Wantang's personal belongings. Every single item she owned had a clear function and position, like a meticulously designed display case, not the closet of a 28-year-old woman. My phone rang again. This time it wasn't a text. It was Lao Zhou calling. Young President Jiang, Lao Zhu's voice was very low, with the sound of keyboard typing in the background. That Cheng Yanbei you asked me to check, I'll tell you what I've found so far first.
Zhou Ningheng, I call him Lao Zhou.
Has a veteran in the legal department of Jiang Yu Group and worked for my grandfather for 15 years. After my grandfather passed, he could have jumped to a bigger platform, but he stayed, saying he wanted to watch over me and keep Jiang Yu steady. He is the person in the company I trust the most. Cheng Yanbei, 36 years old, founder and controlling shareholder of Dijiang Capital. Lao Zhou read through the information item by item. His father, Cheng Boyuan, was among the first generation to do capital operations back in the 90s. The circle calls him half-city Cheng, meaning Hez had his hand in half the industries in Cloud City. Cheng Yanbei is even more ruthless than his father. After taking over Dijiang 3 years ago, he controlled and acquired 11 companies within 3 years, 4 of which were hostile takeovers. His methods are dirty, but legally there are almost no loopholes.
What about his marital status?
I asked. Lao Zhou paused. The typing stopped. That's a bit strange. In public records, Cheng Yanbei's marital status is single. There is no record of any marriage registration, very few scandals even. Single, but the marriage certificate he had just shown me had Lu Wantang and him sitting side by side. That expression and posture couldn't be faked. My mind raced, settling on a possibility, if that marriage certificate was real, but the names registered were not Cheng Yanbei and Lu Wantang, then of course it wouldn't be found in public records. Help me check another name, I said.
Shen Tingxi.
Shen with the 3-dot water radical, Ting as in listen, Xi as in stream. Check if this person has any connection to Cheng Yanbei.
Shen Tingxi?
Lao Zhou repeated the name, his tone carrying clear confusion.
Young President Jiang, this name, are you sure about those 3 characters?
Why?
Have you heard of it?
The other end of the line was quiet for a couple of seconds. Lao Zhou rarely hesitated, but right now he was clearly weighing his words, which made that bad feeling in my gut intensify a few degrees. Shen Tingxi, this name, I have indeed seen it, Lao Zhou said, his voice dropping even lower, as if afraid of being overheard. But not now. About a year ago, an internal audit report from Dijiang Capital was anonymously leaked. It mentioned a capital transfer of 50 million yuan. The signatory on the receiving account was Shen Tingxi. At that time, this report only circulated within a small circle for a few days before it was completely wiped from the internet. No one pursued it further afterwards. I happened to save a copy at the time, so I have an impression. A year ago?
I calculated the timeline.
A year ago, I hadn't even met Lu Wantang yet.
Exactly.
When you met her 8 months ago, that audit report had already been scrubbed clean. Young President Jiang Lao Zhu's tone turned very serious. If Lu Wantang is this Shen Tingxi, then her approaching you is probably not a coincidence. The knuckles of my hand gripping the phone turned white from the force. That sentence Cheng Yanbei had said before he left echoed in my ears again. If your grandfather were still alive, he wouldn't have let you marry this woman.
Grandfather.
Cheng Yanbei mentioned my grandfather. Jiang Heading passed away suddenly 2 years ago from cardiac arrest.
It was very abrupt.
I was on a business trip out of town at the time and didn't even get to see him one last time. My grandfather's will was drawn up hastily. He left 37% of Jiang Yu Group's equity and the position of chairman to me, with the rest held dispersedly by board members. At that time, everyone thought a 25-year-old kid like me couldn't possibly hold up such a large enterprise. But I held it up, and even grew Jiang Yu's performance to 1.5 times what it was under my grandfather. The greatest regret of my grandfather's life was probably not being able to see me get married. So when I brought Lu Wantang to his grave, I knelt on the bluestone slab and talked to him for a long time. I said, "Grandfather, rest assured, this girl is wonderful. She will take good care of me for you." If what Cheng Yanbei said was true, then the woman I brought was no wonderful girl at all. I tried dialing Lu Wantang's number again. It was still off. I used another, less used phone number to send her a WeChat message. The message was sent and showed as read, but there was no reply at all.
Read, meaning she saw it but she chose silence.
Cheng Yanbei said her name was Shen Tingxi. Lao Zhou said Shen Tingxi had suspicious financial dealings with Dijiang Capital. The person who texted me claimed to be from the Public Security Bureau Archives Division, saying my marriage certificate might be fake. If the marriage certificate was fake, then what did that make the honeymoon? That wedding, those tears, those vows, what did any of it mean?
I didn't believe it.
I didn't believe that a woman who could stay up all night when my gastritis flared up, holding her hand over my stomach, a woman who cried so much her wedding makeup smeared when I lifted her veil at the wedding. I didn't believe that such a woman could have made these 8 months into a meticulously rehearsed play. But at the same time, I was also very clear, if she really was Shen Tingxi, if that 50 million yuan capital transfer was real, then it meant the day Lu Wantang walked into my life was not arranged by fate, but designed by someone. Lao Zhou, keep digging on Shen Tingxi. I want her complete file. Also, I hesitated for a moment, then still said it aloud. Check Lu Wantang's marriage registration record. See if there's even a record of her and me in the Civil Affairs Bureau's system.
Understood.
Young President Jiang, watch yourself. A man like Cheng Yanbei won't stop until he gets what he wants. Since has come to your door, there will definitely be more moves coming. After hanging up, I walked out to the balcony and lit a cigarette. I don't usually smoke, but right now I needed something to hold in my hands. The night at Yunbei was very quiet. The swimming pool below was lit a tranquil blue. Occasionally a resident walked their dog past.
Everything looked as peaceful as usual.
But this marital home I was living in suddenly felt a little unfamiliar to me. On the coffee table was a photo of Lu Wantang, and me taken in Sanya. In the photo, she was standing on tiptoe, kissing my cheek. The sea breeze had tousled her hair, and the sunlight was so beautiful it seemed unreal. I picked up that photo frame, turned it over, and unscrewed the back panel.
The photo slipped out of the slot.
On the back of the photo, a small line was written in ballpoint pen. It was Lu Wantang's handwriting. Very neat. Jiang Yubai and Lu Wantang, second day of honeymoon, Lu Wito. May every day be like this, with plenty of sunshine, and with you being wonderful. I turned the photo over to look at the front. Her smile was too real. The curve of her lips, the fine lines squeezed out at the corners of her eyes, the naturally relaxed posture of her body leaning against my shoulder. These details, if they were an act, then Lu Wantang's acting skills were good enough to sweep every film award festival in the world. But if they weren't an act, then why did she stay silent on the phone?
Why did she only say don't believe him and then lose contact?
What was that marriage certificate from last May all about?
My phone buzzed.
It was a file Lao Zhou had sent, titled Compilation of Information Related to Shen Tingxi. I stubbed out the cigarette, walked back to the living room, sat on the sofa, and started reading line by line. The first entry sent a chill down my back. Shen Tingxi's household registration information, her birth date, the first 17 digits of her ID number, were exactly the same as what Lu Wantang had filled out on the marriage registration form. Only the last check digit was different. But Shen Tingxi's household registration status showed as transferred, the transfer date being March of last year, with the new address not publicly recorded. The second entry made my scalp tingle even more. Shen Tingxi had a shell company registered in her name a year ago. The registration address overlapped with an idle property of Dijiang Capital. The business scope on the industrial and commercial registration was business management consulting, but since its establishment, the company had no records of any public business activities. The third entry was a screenshot of a bank transfer receipt. The timestamp showed April of last year. The receiving account was that shell company. The name of the paying account was redacted, but the amount was very clear. The amount in words read 50 million yuan only. Last April, 50 million yuan, meaning just 2 months after that money arrived, I met Lu Wantang at a business cocktail party. That night, I originally hadn't planned on going to that party. It was a business partner, President Zhao, who dragged me there at the last minute.
I remember it particularly well.
Lu Wantang was wearing a champagne-colored spaghetti-strap maxi dress that day, standing alone on the balcony drinking orange juice, completely out of place in the noisy, ostentatious atmosphere of the party. President Zhao introduced her, saying she was a distant relative's daughter, just back from abroad, unfamiliar with Cloud City, and asked me to look after her. Seeing her standing alone by the balcony at the time, I did feel a little sorry for her. Every coincidence after that, looking back now, maybe wasn't a coincidence at all. That cocktail party encounter was arranged by President Zhao. How did President Zhao know Lu Wantang? Or rather, how did President Zhao know Shen Tingxi?
What role was he playing in this whole setup?
I read the file from beginning to end. The last line was a note added by Lao Zhou. The above information is all obtained from non-public channels and cannot be used as legal evidence.
For internal reference only.
Also, the last active communication record for Shen Tingxi was located near Dijiang Tower, time-stamped 1 week ago.
1 week ago?
That was the day before Lu Wantang and I got our marriage license. If this information was accurate, it meant the night before she went to the Civil Affairs Bureau with me, Lu Wantang, or rather Shen Tingxi, had been to Dijiang Tower, had been to Cheng Yanbei's territory. I closed my eyes, trying hard to recall Lu Wantang's schedule the day before we got the license. She said she had made an appointment with her best friend that day to try on bridesmaid dresses. She came back after 9 in the evening. When she returned, she brought a box of my favorite durian pastries and curled up on the sofa to watch half a football match with me. The name of the shop printed on the packaging of that box of durian pastries I remembered very clearly, Sufeiji. There were only 2 locations in Cloud City, one at Wanda Plaza on the west side, the other right on Financial Street, less than 200 meters from Dijiang Tower. I didn't know what exactly the relationship was between Cheng Yanbei and Shen Tingxi, whether husband and wife, co-conspirators, or mortal enemies. I also didn't know whether Lu Wantang's feelings for me were true or false, whether she approached me out of her own heart or under someone else's direction. But one thing I was becoming more and more certain of, I hadn't accidentally fallen into someone else's trap.
I had been led, step by step, meticulously designed, into this position.
And Cheng Yanbei showing up at my door today wasn't to kindly warn me either. Showing me the marriage certificate, forcing me to make that call, leaving that sentence in the hallway. All these actions were part of his plan. He was waiting for my reaction, waiting for me to check, to ask, to doubt, and then in that doubt, to make a certain decision that aligned with his expectations. I turned off the phone screen, plunging the room into complete darkness. It was quiet for about half a minute. Then the phone lit up again. Not a call, not a text, but an email. The sender's name made all the hairs on my body stand on end. Sender, Lu Wantang. Subject line contained only 2 words, save me. I opened that email and read it over 20 times. The content was very simple, so simple it was unsettling. Hubby, I'm safe, but I can't contact you for now.
Don't believe anyone.
Wait 3 days for me.
In 3 days I will definitely come back and explain everything to you.
Also, there's something under the bottom panel of the bottom drawer in the closet.
Go look. After you see it, you can decide for yourself whether you want to wait for me.
Love you, Wantang.
I didn't immediately go to check the closet, because this whole thing, from the moment Cheng Yanbei knocked on the door, every step felt pre-designed. I didn't know if this email truly came from Lu Wantang, if what waited for me under the bottom panel of the bottom drawer was an explanation, or a deeper, more elaborate trap. But after thinking for a full 2 minutes, I still stood up. The master bedroom closet was custom-made after Lu Wantang moved in. French-style cream-white cabinet doors. She said this color was timeless and wouldn't go out of style for a decade. I crouched down and pulled open the bottom drawer. Inside were a few winter cashmere blankets neatly folded, the smell of mothballs rushing into my nose. I moved the blankets out one by one. The drawer's bottom panel was a single piece of pressed wood, the edges fitting snugly. I pressed around the 4 edges with my hand. The lower left corner was a little loose. Using a bit of force to pry it up, the panel lifted a corner, revealing a manila envelope underneath. The envelope wasn't sealed. I pulled out the contents. It was an ICBC savings card. A sticky note was stuck to it with the card number facing down, with a 6-digit password written on it. The handwriting was unmistakably Lu Wantang's. Besides the bank card, the envelope also contained a printed document. 3 thin pages, neatly stapled together. I flipped to the first page, and the title made my breath catch: Proposal for the Acquisition of Jiang Yu Group by Dijiang Capital Draft. The classification level was marked Top Secret. The document number read DJJY0417. I quickly scanned the content. This proposal listed in detail the valuation, debt ratio, cash flow, and equity vulnerabilities that could be used as breakthrough points for the acquisition of all subsidiaries under Jiang Yu Group. The analysis was so thorough, the data so precise, it could only have been obtained by someone within Jiang Yu's core management. At the end of the document was a handwritten signature, signed Cheng Yanbei. The date was March of last year. March of last year, a full 3 months before I met Lu Wantang. Meaning, 3 months before Lu Wantang appeared in my life. Cheng Yanbei had already prepared everything needed to devour Jiang Yu Group.
And Lu Wantang was hiding this document.
When did she get it? From whom?
Who was she hiding it from by stashing it under the closet panel? I took out my phone intending to photograph the document and send it to Lao Zhou, but stopped myself a second before pressing the shutter. There is a saying in Cloud City circles: a secret on a phone is no secret. For a company the size of Dijiang Capital, if they wanted, accessing someone's communication records and cloud storage via the telecom operators wasn't a difficult task. The fact that Lu Wantang hadn't sent an email attachment but hidden a physical item in the closet spoke volumes. Electronic channels weren't safe. I photographed the document from start to finish but stored the photos in an offline encrypted album on my phone's local storage. Then I put the manila envelope back under the bottom panel as it was, folded the blankets back into the drawer, closed the cabinet door, and restored everything to how it was.
Back in the living room, I called Lao Zhou.
This time I didn't use WeChat voice, I used the encrypted landline. Lao Zhou, forget about Shen Tingxi for now. I need you to do 2 things. First, pull up the equity structure charts for all of Jiang Yu Group subsidiaries. I want to see if there have been any abnormal equity changes in the last 2 years, even very small percentages. Second, check if Dijiang Capital had any contact with any Jiang Yu shareholders, including board members, around March of last year. Lao Zhou was silent for a moment, then said, "Young President Jiang, did you find something?"
I can't say yet.
I'll tell you once I've confirmed it.
Get those things checked out first, the sooner the better. After hanging up, I sat on the sofa and started to piece together the person that was Lu Wantang from the very beginning. I had known Lu Wantang for 8 months, dated for 6, been married for a week. If you compared her to a book, then what I had read in these 8 months was probably just the cover and the preface. I hadn't flipped open a single page of the real content. I started recalling the details of our time together. Lu Wantang said her parents died when she was young, that she grew up in an orphanage and worked her way through college. But one time, when we were walking through a mall and past a piano store, she sat down and played a Chopin piece. Her technique was so skilled, it didn't seem like an amateur level. I asked her at the time when she learned piano. She froze for a moment and said she took a free music class in university. But that Chopin piece was a professional grade 8 difficulty level. Any piano teacher would say you can't play it like that without at least 7 or 8 years of disciplined training from childhood. She also spoke fluent French. When we were on vacation in Sanya, the hotel front desk clerk was French and spoke broken Chinese. Lu Wantang directly conversed with him in a standard Parisian accent, as naturally as if it were her mother tongue. Afterwards, I asked her, and she smiled and said French was a second foreign language she picked up as an elective in university. I didn't think much of it then, but now looking back, her French fluency, her foundational piano skills, her professional terminology during wine tastings, her understanding of the luxury goods supply chain, all these things added together didn't seem at all like qualities a regular girl who grew up in an orphanage would possess. Another time, about 3 months into our relationship, she was staying over at my place and took a call in the middle of the night. Thinking I was asleep, she went to the balcony barefoot. She kept her voice very low, but I still vaguely heard a few sentences. "I've told you how many times, don't call me at this hour. I will give you the item on time. But remember this, I only have one bottom line." When she came back to bed, her hands and feet were ice cold. I asked her what was wrong, and she said it was work stuff. I believed her at the time. People in love tend to believe what they want to believe. Now I don't. I picked up my phone and scrolled to President Zhao's number. President Zhou's full name was Zhao Qinian, Vice President of the Cloud City Chamber of Commerce, an old acquaintance of my grandfather. He was the one who introduced Lu Wantang to me at that cocktail party, saying she was the daughter of a distant relative. I pressed the dial button. It rang several times before the other end picked up.
President Jiang?
What makes you think of calling me so late?
Zhao Qinian's voice carried the grogginess of sleep, with the sound of a TV in the background.
Uncle Zhao, sorry to bother you.
There is something I wanted to ask. I tried to keep my tone casual. I've never really understood Wantang's family situation thoroughly. Her parents' side. Do you know the details? There was a pause of about 2 seconds on the other end. 2 seconds isn't long, but for a seasoned socialite like Zhao Qinian, 2 seconds of hesitation already spoke volumes. Her parents, didn't they pass away years ago?
Why are you suddenly asking about this?
It's nothing. I was just sorting out the wedding gift money list and noticed there were very few people from her side of the family. Just asking casually. Uncle Zhao, Wantang is related to you.
Do you know if she has any other living relatives?
Zhao Qinian gave a couple of dry laughs.
Well, about that,
I guess we're distant relatives, separated by several generations.
I can't really say for sure who else is in her family.
Why don't you just ask her directly?
He deflected completely, but he repeated the distant relative line again, as if reinforcing a pre-scripted line. All right, I'll ask her later.
Uncle Zhao, rest early.
Just before hanging up, I asked one more thing.
Oh, Uncle Zhao? Do you know Cheng Yanbei?
This time, Zhao Qinian's pause was even longer. Then he said, I don't know him.
Heard the name, never met.
Why?
Nothing.
Just asking around.
I hung up.
The chill in my heart spread from my spine all the way to my fingertips. Zhao Qinian was lying. When he said I don't know him, his voice had noticeably tightened half a notch. But he immediately added, heard the name, never met. This kind of excessive explanation is exactly the most common verbal tic of someone who is lying. Zhao Qinian was the introducer.
He knew Cheng Yanbei.
At that cocktail party, he brought Lu Wantang in front of me. And Lu Wantang was hiding a top-secret document about Dijiang Capital's acquisition of Jiang Yubai. No matter how you connect this line, it all points to the same conclusion. From the day I met Lu Wantang, I was being played like a puppet, perfectly arranged. But there was still one thing I couldn't figure out. If Lu Wantang was sent by Cheng Yanbei, why did she steal Dijiang's acquisition proposal and hide it in the closet? If she was Shen Tingxi, Cheng Yanbei's lawful wife, why would she rather not be the lady boss of Dijiang Capital and instead come marry me? The size of Dijiang Capital in Cheng Yanbei's hands was no smaller than Jiang Yu. If Shen Tingxi was his wife, she wouldn't be short of money or status. Unless she wasn't Cheng Yanbei's accomplice. She was someone Cheng Yanbei was targeting. Or she was his accomplice, but she turned against him. Or, from the very beginning to the very end, she had no choice in the matter. The more I thought, the more my head ached.
My temples throbbed.
The empty box of durian pastries was still in the trash can, not yet thrown out.
The shop name on the packaging, Sufeiji Financial Street location, pricked at my eyes like a needle.
I opened the browser on my phone and typed Shen Tingxi into the search bar. The search results were pathetically sparse, just a few irrelevant web pages.
By the second page, there was nothing at all.
I switched search engines and added Dijiang Capital as a keyword. This time, one result popped up. It was a cached snapshot of a now-defunct webpage, the title reading Dijiang Capital CFO Shen Tingxi attends annual investor summit. The cached timestamp showed it was from 1 year and 5 months ago.
CFO.
Chief Financial Officer. I clicked on the thumbnail of that cache. The image was blurry, but I could make out a woman in a black professional suit standing at a podium, the Dijiang Capital logo on the backdrop behind her. I enlarged the image, and enlarged it again. That woman standing on the stage, the contour of that face, the curve of that chin, that habitual posture of tilting her head slightly while speaking, was the exact same face I saw first thing every morning when I woke up. Cheng Yanbei hadn't lied to me. Lu Wantang was Shen Tingxi. She was the former CFO of Dijiang Capital, and she was, or at least had been, Cheng Yanbei's wife in name. But she was now my wife. Or rather, that marriage certificate she and I got, I didn't even know if it counted in the Civil Affairs Bureau's system anymore. I closed my eyes. An image surfaced in my mind. It was the afternoon we got the license, outside the Civil Affairs Bureau. Lu Wantang was holding the red marriage booklet, standing on the steps. Sunlight, filtered through the gaps in the leaves of the plane trees, fell on her shoulders. She suddenly turned around and hugged me, so tight I could feel her whole body trembling.
I thought at the time she was excited, happy.
Looking back now, that trembling looked more like fear. She whispered a sentence into my ear, her voice so small it was almost scattered by the wind. Jiang Yubai, no matter what happens in the future, remember this, I truly love you. I smiled at the time and replied, what could possibly happen in the future? The future is just oil, salt, soy, sauce, having kids, and growing old together. She didn't respond to that. She just buried her face in my chest and didn't let go for a long, long time. That sentence, that hug, that trembling, I finally understood now what it was. It was a person on the eve of walking into a lie she herself had woven, desperately clinging one last time to that tiny, tiny bit of real warmth, but knowing it didn't answer that question still in my heart. Whose side was Lu Wantang really on? She was Cheng Yanbei's wife, the CFO of Dijiang, the chess piece arranged to get close to me. She stole Dijiang's acquisition plan and hid it in my home. She went to Dijiang Tower the night before we got the license. She told me on the phone don't believe him and then disappeared. She emailed me saying to wait 3 days. If she really came back in 3 days, what was I supposed to do with her? Outside the window, the night was thick and unyielding. I picked up my phone and looked again at the 2 words in that email, wait 3 days. I sent a text reply to her email address. Just 6 words, 3 days.
I'll wait for you.
Whether she was Lu Wantang or Shen Tingshi, regardless of her original intention for getting close to me, there was at least one thing I wouldn't deny. The warmth she gave me in every detail over these 8 months didn't feel fake. If that was an act, she fooled me, and probably fooled herself too. But if she didn't come back in 3 days, or if what came back was another version of Shen Tingshi, then I had my own cards to play too. Grandfather taught me that the Jiang family never picks a fight, but we never back down from one either. If Cheng Yanbei wanted to swallow Jiang Yu, let him come.
I wasn't just going to defend Jiang Yu.
I was going to make Dijiang Capital spit out that 50 million yuan, along with the interest on this debt, down to the last cent. The phone screen on the coffee table lit up again. It was a new message from Lao Zhou.
Found the equity structure changes.
Last June, a small amount of equity in 2 of Jiang Yu's subsidiaries was acquired in batches by a mysterious buyer through 3 offshore accounts. The cumulative percentage isn't large, but it's exactly enough to cause trouble in exercising a veto power. All leads on the buyer ultimately point to the same controller, Cheng Yanbei. The files are encrypted. Let's talk in person tomorrow.
Last June.
That was the exact month I met Lu Wantang, meaning while I was busy falling in love, Cheng Yanbei was silently hammering nails into my company. And the person he sent to disrupt my vision and my judgment was the very woman who had me completely captivated. I flipped my phone over and placed it face down on the table. I tilted my head back and finished the glass of water on the table that had long gone cold.
3 days, 72 hours,
4,320 minutes.
I would wait.
The next morning at 9:30, I was standing at the base of Dijiang Tower. This building is in the heart of Cloud City's financial street, its entire facade made of deep blue glass curtain walls. Under the sunlight, it looked like a massive block of ice. I tilted my head up to glance at the rooftop of the 48th floor, took a deep breath, pushed through the revolving door, and walked inside. The receptionist had clearly been notified in advance. After I gave my name, a receptionist in a black pencil skirt led me straight into a private elevator that went directly to the 48th floor. The elevator rose quickly, my eardrums feeling the pressure. The floor numbers ticked up one by one. When it reached 48, the doors slid open silently and I was greeted by a whole wall of floor-to-ceiling glass windows. The entire skyline of Cloud City was spread out beneath my feet. Cheng Yanbei's office was outrageously large, at least 200 square meters by my estimate. The decor was minimalist, mainly black, white, and gray. The only item that could be considered decoration was a piece of calligraphy hanging on the wall behind his desk. 4 large characters in wild cursive script, win against heaven by half a move. The signature was Cheng Yanbei's own name, with a red vermilion seal stamped beside it. Cheng Yanbei sat behind that black ebony desk, which was at least 3 meters long. Seeing me enter, he didn't stand up, merely raising a hand to gesture for me to sit on the sofa opposite. He had changed today into a navy blue suit, his tie impeccably knotted. Sitting there, he looked like a blade kept inside its sheath. You couldn't see the sharp edge, but you knew it could be drawn at any moment. Mr. Jiang, you are very punctual. Cheng Yanbei picked up a remote control from his desk and pressed a button. The floor-to-ceiling windows behind him darkened in tint. The light in the room dimmed, and a projector screen descended on the opposite wall.
I'm a man who dislikes beating around the bush.
Since you're here, it means you have a basic understanding of Lu Wantang's true identity. Let's get straight to the point. A photo appeared on the projector screen. It was the marriage registration photo of Lu Wantang and me, but next to it was another photo, a marriage certificate photo of Cheng Yanbei and a woman. That woman was Lu Wantang, or Shen Tingshi. The registration date was clearly shown as May 16th of last year. 2 marriage certificates, the same woman, 2 different husbands. The dates were less than 14 months apart. According to the relevant provisions of the Civil Code, If one party, during the existence of a lawful marriage, registers another marriage with another person, the latter marriage is void from its inception. Cheng Yanbei's tone was like reading out a legal provision, unhurried. That is to say, the marriage certificate you and Shen Tingxi, sorry, you're used to calling her Lu Wantang, got last week is nothing but a piece of waste paper in the eyes of the law. I sat on the sofa without moving, looking at him.
Of course, you can't be blamed for this.
You are also a victim. Cheng Yanbei switched to the next image, a screenshot of a bank transaction record. The reason I asked you here today is to discuss a deal. A string of numbers appeared on the projector screen. When I saw those numbers, my pupils involuntarily contracted. It was the equity breakdown of 3 of Jiang Yubai Group's core subsidiaries. Each one had been indirectly held by someone through offshore shell companies, ranging from 4 to 6% each. Individually, the percentages weren't large. But when you added the voting record from the board re-election 3 months ago, where 2 independent directors had suddenly switched sides, these scattered shares, plus the 2 defecting directors, could exactly muster just over 1/3 of the voting weight on major issues.
What does 1/3 mean?
Veto power.
It was written clearly in Jiang Yubai Group's Articles of Association. Any resolution involving company mergers, splits, or major asset disposals must be approved by more than 2/3 of the directors present at the board meeting. Conversely, as long as there was more than 1/3 opposition, any major decision couldn't be pushed through.
Your grandfather, Jiang Heading, was indeed a formidable figure.
He designed Jiang Yu's equity structure to be watertight. Cheng Yanbei leaned back in his chair, fingers interlaced on the table. But what he didn't anticipate was that the more intricate the structure, the more vulnerable it is to internal fractures. In the 2 years you've taken over, you've done well performance-wise.
But you have a fatal blind spot in equity. You trusted the old retainers your grandfather left behind too much.
His words drove into my most avoided spot like a needle. It wasn't that I hadn't considered this possibility. But every time I thought of those 2 uncles who, at my grandfather's funeral, with red-rimmed eyes, had sworn to me they would assist young President Jiang in keeping Jiang Yubai going, I suppressed my doubts.
What do you want?
I finally spoke. Very simple. Cheng Yanbei stood up, walked to the floor-to-ceiling window, his back to me.
I want Jiang Yubai Group's new energy division, Jiang Yubai Green Energy.
You spin it off and transfer it to Dijiang Capital at 60% of market valuation. In exchange, I will transfer these scattered shares back to you at the original price, and those 2 directors will resign. At the same time, he turned around, his face hard to read against the backlight, but his eyes fixed on me like an eagle's. I will formally process the divorce with Shen Tingxi. That way you can legitimately marry her.
Although that marriage certificate is invalid, you can re-register.
No one will pursue it. Are you threatening me? My voice was flat, no rise or fall. Not a threat, a deal. Cheng Yanbei took a couple of steps and sat down on the single sofa opposite me, leaning his body slightly forward, closing the distance between us. Though Jiang Yubai Green Energy is a prime asset, it's at most 1/10 of Jiang Yubai Group's total portfolio. Trading 1 subsidiary to get back full controlling interest in 3 subsidiaries, plus having the face you love lie next to you legally, by any calculation you don't lose on this deal. He paused, pulled a document pouch from under the coffee table, and pushed it in front of me. If you agree, I've already drafted the contract. You can sign it right now. I picked up the pouch and opened it. Inside was a pre-printed equity transfer agreement, the clauses densely packed line after line. When I flipped to the last page, I saw a detail that made my blood run cold. The signing date on the agreement wasn't today. It was dated 3 days ago. 3 days ago, Lu Wantang and I were still in Sanya, still holding hands tightly in that clear blue sea. And Cheng Yanbei had already printed out this contract here in Cloud City, ready to bleed me dry, waiting for me to come back and sign it. He knew I would come.
Why do you think I would sign?
I closed the document and looked up at him. Cheng Yanbei smiled. That smile was exactly the same expression he had at my front door that day. Not smugness, but a certainty of having calculated everything. He pulled another phone from his inner suit pocket, tapped open a video, and held it out to me. The video showed a windowless room. Lu Wantang sat in a chair, her hair disheveled, visible bruises on her face. But she wasn't tied up. In front of her was a glass of water and an unopened boxed meal. It didn't look like she was imprisoned, more like she was being guarded. A man's voice from off-camera said, "Miss Shen, President Cheng says, as long as you cooperate, he won't make things hard for Jiang Yubai." Lu Wantang lifted her head. Her lips moved as if she wanted to say something, but in the end she said nothing, just shook her head. The video cut off there. No more than 15 seconds in total. She's very safe right now. Cheng Yanbei said, taking the phone back. But if our deal falls through, I'm not sure how much longer shall stay safe. Also, he paused, his tone suddenly turning icy. What do you think would happen if I publicly announced that Shen Tingshi committed bigamy with you while still married to me? How much impact would a bigamy scandal involving the chairman of a publicly listed company have on Jiang Yu Group's reputation? Would the Securities Regulatory Commission step in to investigate? Would your shareholders seize the chance to make a move? He had calculated every single step. Trade Jiang Yu green energy to clear my 3 paths of retreat. The equity returned. The board stabilized. Lu Wantang safe. If I refused, he would destroy Jiang Yu's reputation with the bigamy scandal, hollow out my power with his pawns on the board, and use Lu Wantang's safety as leverage against me. I need time to consider. I placed the contract back on the coffee table. Fine. I'll give you 48 hours. Cheng Yanbei stood up, walked back behind his desk, sat down, and pushed the contract forward a little more. But Mr. Jiang, there's one thing I want to remind you. Your grandfather started from nothing and built Jiang Yu Group from a small building materials factory over 35 long years. And this empire has been in your hands for only 2 years since you took over. 2 days is enough time for a smart man to make the right choice. I stood up and walked toward the door, my leather shoes making no sound on the gray carpet.
Halfway there, I stopped.
I turned slightly and asked him a question. President Cheng, you were married to her for over a year.
Do you know her?
This Shen Tingshi, what kind of person is she really? Cheng Yanbei leaned back in his high-backed chair and was silent for a few seconds. That silence was subtle. It didn't feel like he was organizing his words, more like my question had struck some place he didn't want to touch.
Shen Tingshi, he spoke slowly, his tone carrying an emotion I couldn't quite read, is a person you never know what shall do the next second.
I paid a great price to pull her out of the mud, but the way she repaid me was by destroying the most important game of my life.
Jiang Yubai, you think you've married a gentle, virtuous wife?
You're wrong.
What you've married is a knife.
I'm just not sure whether this knife will ultimately stab you or me. He said nothing more. He pressed a button on his desk, and the office door opened automatically. I walked out of the revolving door of Dijiang Tower and stood on the sidewalk of Financial Street. The autumn sun shone warmly on my body, but I was cold from head to toe. I pulled out my phone and sent 2 messages. The first was to Lao Zhou, activate the emergency trust. Complete all procedures within 3 days. Contact everyone on the list.
I need to meet them one by one.
The second was sent to the email address Lu Wantang had used to email me. I've met him. He says you're a knife.
Are you?
There was no reply to the second message, but I knew she had seen it because the email client showed read. After coming out of Dijiang Tower, I didn't go back to Yunbei. I drove straight to the west side of the city. The car threaded through the winding alleys of Cloud City's old town and finally stopped in front of an inconspicuous gray 3-story building. The sign on the building read Jiang Yu Group Archives Management Center. It looked no different from any ordinary administrative office building. But the core people within Jiang Yu all knew that this was the last line of defense my grandfather had set up back in the day. Lao Zhou was already waiting at the entrance. He was wearing a dark gray jacket, holding 2 bulging document pouches, his expression even more serious than it had been on the phone the night before. Young President Jiang, everything is ready. Lao Zhou took the car keys from my hand and led me inside the small building. We passed through 2 security doors requiring both fingerprint and iris recognition, finally entering a windowless archive room. The room wasn't large, just an iron table, 2 chairs, and a black and white photo of my grandfather hanging on the wall. This photo was taken on the day Jiang Yu Group was founded. In the photo, my grandfather wore a washed-out blue cotton Zongshan suit, smiling at the camera with a face full of wrinkles, a row of newly built factory buildings behind him. I stood in front of the photo for a few seconds, then pulled out a chair and sat down. Lao Zhou pushed the document pouches onto the table and opened them one by one. First, regarding the emergency trust, Lao Zhou pulled out the first document. It was a trust deed stamped with the official seal of Jiang Yu Group and my grandfather's personal seal. Before Elder Jiang passed, he established an offshore family trust. The beneficiary is your direct descendant, meaning currently just you alone. The trust assets include 15% equity in Jiang Yu Group, 3 properties in Yunbei, and an overseas cash deposit of approximately $200 million. According to the terms of the deed, this trust can be urgently activated upon a significant change in your marital status, without board approval or any shareholder signatures. Grandfather foresaw back then that someone would use my marriage against me. I flipped through the yellowed deed. The ink of my grandfather's signature had faded a little, but every stroke penetrated through the back of the paper. Elder Jiang's exact words were, This grandson of mine is good at everything except Hes too soft-hearted with women. Gotta leave him a way out. When Lao Zhou said this, the corner of his mouth twitched, as if suppressing a laugh, but his eyes were clearly wet. I lowered my head to look at that deed. My nose stung a little, but I didn't let the emotion spread. This was not the time to mourn my grandfather.
Cheng Yanbei had given me 48 hours. I couldn't waste a single minute.
Once the trust is activated, can this 15% equity be directly injected into board seats at Jiang Yu Group?
I asked.
Yes, and according to the company's articles of association, trust equity carries double voting rights. Lao Zhou pulled out a copy of the articles and pointed out a clause for me with his finger. This is a clause your grandfather personally added back then. Many people didn't understand at the time, thinking double voting rights were too domineering. Looking back now, Elder Jiang had calculated every step. 15% equity with double voting rights was equivalent to 30% voting weight on the board. Adding my own 37%, even if those two defecting directors fully sided with Cheng Yanbei, my position on the board would still be unshakable. Cheng Yanbei thought he had me by the throat, but my grandfather had already wrapped that throat in armor 10 years ago. The second matter, Lao Zhou opened the second document pouch. Inside was a thick stack of lists, densely packed with at least 40 or 50 names and contact details. This is a list of companies that have been maliciously acquired by Dijiang Capital in the past 3 years. 11 in total. 4 of them were dismantled and sold off right after acquisition, the original founders losing everything. Following your instructions, I focused on 3 categories of people. First, those who personally incurred massive debts after their companies were swallowed. Second, those who fought Dijiang in court and either lost or settled out of court. Third, those who have evidence proving Dijiang used illegal methods during the acquisition process. I took the list and scanned it from top to bottom. The medical equipment company acquisition from 3 years ago was at the very top. The founder was named Gu Changhe. After his company was swallowed by Dijiang, he jumped off a building. He didn't die, but he was paralyzed from the neck down. His wife took the kids and remarried. Further down were a husband and wife team doing new material research, a food processing factory run for 20 years, an environmental tech company that had won a National Science and Technology Progress Award. The common thread among these people was that they had all been devoured by Dijiang using the same methods, first crushing the stock price through short-selling institutions, then quietly accumulating shares through offshore accounts, and finally launching a hostile takeover when the stock price hit rock bottom. After the takeover, the core assets were broken apart and sold to the highest bidder. Cheng Yanbei and his father, the so-called half-city Cheng, had used this set of techniques to forcibly snatch God knows how many prime assets right out of the mouths of Cloud City's industrialists. And these victims, some were still struggling through life in Cloud City. Some had fled far away, and some, like Gu Changhe, lay in hospital beds, needing a nurse's help just to turn over. Give me Gu Changhe's contact info, I said. Lao Zhou hesitated. Young President Jiang Gu Changhe's current condition isn't great. He lives in a rehabilitation hospital on the outskirts of the city. He can't move anything below his neck. If you go see him, I'm afraid. I'm not going to him to pour out my troubles. I cut Lao Zhou off, folding the list and putting it in my pocket. I'm going to tell him that Cheng Yanbei's good days are numbered. The best way to make a desperate man rise again isn't giving him charity. It's giving him a chance at revenge. Lao Zhou looked at me for a few seconds, his expression indescribably complicated. He had followed my grandfather for 15 years and watched me grow up. He had probably never seen me wear this kind of look on my face, but he said nothing. He nodded and pulled a manila envelope from the very bottom of the document pouch, handing it to me.
There is one more thing.
You might need to see this.
I tore open the envelope.
Inside was a single photograph. The photo was of a tombstone. The name on the tombstone was Shen Tingxi. The birth date was exactly the same as the Shen Tingxi on the marriage certificate Cheng Yanbei had shown me, but the date of death was listed as 20 years ago, meaning a person named Shen Tingxi had died 20 years ago, at the age of 8. I pulled this from the management system of Cloud City's Kingsong Cemetery. Lao Zhu's voice was very low. The buyer of this burial plot was Cheng Boyuan, Cheng Yanbei's father. The purchase date was 20 years ago. I don't know who is buried under that tombstone, but the Shen Tingxi identity that Lu Wantang is using in the household registration system is the exact same file as the death certificate on this tombstone. In other words, the identity Lu Wantang is using is that of a girl who died 20 years ago. My fingers unconsciously creased the edge of the photo. A girl who died 20 years ago, her identity dug up and reactivated, placed onto a living person, and that living person was now my wife. Did she take on this identity willingly, or was she forced? Cheng Yanbei said he pulled her out of the mud, What exactly was that mud? Keep digging. The cause of death for this Shen Tingxi. Her family background. Pull up everything you can find. I stood up and locked the photo along with the list into the archive room's safe.
It'll be very busy the next 2 days.
Help me keep a close eye on Dijiang's movements, especially Cheng Yanbei's personal whereabouts.
Understood. There is one more thing. Lao Zhou hesitated. What are you planning to do about Zhao Qinian?
Zhao Qinian.
The man who introduced Lu Wantang to me at that cocktail party. The vice president of the Chamber of Commerce who claimed to be an old friend of my grandfather.
What role exactly was he playing in this game?
I couldn't be sure yet, but one thing was certain. He wasn't innocent.
Don't touch him yet, I said.
Cheng Yanbei thinks Zhao Qinian is a hidden pawn he planted beside me. In that case, this hidden pawn can become a weapon I use to stab back at Cheng Yanbei.
Let him keep thinking I'm still in the dark.
When the timing is right, I'll make him personally deliver the message to Cheng Yanbei. By the time I walked out of the archive center, the sky was already dark. I sat in the car, started the engine but didn't drive off. Instead, I took out my phone and dialed a number.
Hello, is this Mr.
Gu Changhe?
This is Jiang Yubai from Jiang Yu Group.
I want to talk to you about Cheng Yanbei. The other end of the phone was silent for a very long time. So long I thought the line had been disconnected. Then a hoarse male voice, raspy beyond its years, came through the receiver. Every word sounded like it was squeezed out from between clenched teeth. Cheng Yanbei?
You know him?
More than know him, he wants my company now, I said, leaning back in the driver's seat, watching the streetlights flicker on outside the car window one by one, and him looking for everyone who wants him to pay. Mr. Gu, you were the first victim 3 years ago, but you won't be the last, unless someone makes it all stop. A very soft laugh came from the other end. That laugh held mockery, bitterness, and a spark of a fire that had been suppressed for 3 years finally rekindling.
Jiang Yubai, is it?
Jiang Heiting's grandson Gu Changhe accurately identified my background.
Your grandfather was a good man.
Back when Dijiang first made a move against me, the only person in the entire circle who publicly called Cheng Boyuan a disgrace to the industry was your grandfather. Just for those words, whatever you want me to do, just say the word. A man like me, paralyzed in bed, can't even move a finger. The only things I have left are this life, and all the evidence I've gathered over these 3 years. I switched the phone to my left hand, my right fist unconsciously clenched. Outside the window, dusk was settling in. The street lamps of the old town lit up one after another, their warm yellow light spreading over the cracked asphalt. Cheng Yanbei thought he was the hunter and I was the prey. But he forgot one thing. The hunter's greatest weakness is that he only ever stares at the prey he's aiming at. He never sees the beasts he's already wounded, gathering silently in the darkness behind him. This web that had trapped me for 8 months. It was time for someone else to do the weaving. 3 days after the call with Gu Changhe, I started meeting the people on the list, one by one. The meeting place wasn't at the company, nor any location that could be noticed by Dijiang Capital's eyes and ears. Lao Zhou found an abandoned warehouse on the north side of the city, formerly an old factory building of a subsidiary under Jiang Yu Group. The production line had been relocated years ago, and the factory had been vacant for several years, but the water and electricity were still connected. We set up a few chairs in an old workshop office, making it a temporary contact point. In 2 days, I met 11 people, 4 founders of companies swallowed by Dijiang, 2 suppliers pushed to the brink of suicide by Cheng Yanbei, and a middle-aged accountant who had worked in Dijiang Capital's finance department for 5 years before being fired by Cheng Yanbei on grounds of leaking trade secrets. Each person brought something: doctored audit reports, records of illegal short-selling, recordings of shareholders being intimidated and bribed. Over 3 years, each had fought their own isolated battles, the evidence in their hands individually too small to topple Dijiang. But pieced together, all those fragments formed an iron net that could nail Cheng Yanbei for good. Gu Changhe's evidence was the most damning. He had a recording from 3 years ago, the last phone call Cheng Yanbei made to him before his company was acquired. In the recording, Cheng Yanbei said 8 words: either sign or go die. After the recording came the witness statement, from when Gu Changhe jumped out his office window, and the transaction records showing how Dijiang Capital paid to have the police classify the incident as suicide due to personal depression.
We can't use these things yet, I said to the 11 people gathered in the old workshop.
Cheng Yanbei's network in Cloud City runs far deeper than you can imagine. If we act rashly now, this evidence will be suppressed before it even reaches the top. I need a moment when he lets his guard down completely.
What kind of moment?
The one who spoke was the accountant Dijiang had fired. His surname was Sun. He wore thick glasses and habitually pushed up his glasses frame when he spoke.
Cheng Yanbei is extremely vigilant.
I worked under him for 5 years and never once saw him show a crack in his armor in any public setting. His crack isn't in public settings, I said. His crack is inside my home. Everyone froze for a moment. I didn't explain much, just told them to keep organizing the chain of evidence, keep their phones on, and wait for my notice. It was past 10 at night by the time I left the old warehouse. I drove back to Yunbei, passing a digital photo lab that was still open. A detail suddenly came to mind. The full video footage from the wedding day shot by the wedding planning company. They had sent the edited final cut to my email a few days ago, but with everything about Cheng Yanbei, I hadn't had a chance to watch it. When I got home, I plugged the USB drive with the wedding video into the TV and sat down on the sofa. The video started with the morning of the wedding. My groomsmen and I were messing around in the hotel suite. In the footage, I was wearing that custom-made navy blue suit. So nervous, I tied my tie 3 times before getting it right. The shot cut to Lu Wantang's makeup room. She was sitting in front of the mirror, only half her makeup done, hair still in rollers. Seeing the videographer come, she covered her face and laughed, saying, don't film, I'm not ready yet." Looking at that woman in the frame, laughing with her brows and eyes curved so beautifully, the feeling in my heart was indescribable. In these 8 months, I had seen her laugh, seen her cry, seen the way her eyelashes fluttered lightly as she slept in my arms. If these images were fake, then what was real? But I wasn't watching this footage today for nostalgia. Cheng Yanbei had said something. You should see clearly who it is you married. And I was thinking, maybe the answer was hidden in the corners I had overlooked. The video reached the formal wedding segment. A banquet hall with 60 people, not lavishly decorated, but very warm. Champagne-colored roses that Lu Wantang had picked covered the entire check-in table and the ceremony aisle. The elders of my grandparents' generation sat in the front row. Zhao Qinian, as the introducer, sat off to the side in the second row.
Everything looked exactly as I remembered it.
I pressed the remote control, playing it back frame by frame, going over every guest's face. Most of them I recognized, a few core executives from Jiang Yubai Group, my closest college roommates, Lu Wantang's 5 or 6 so-called best friends. Looking back now, most of those best friends were probably actors hired to fill the seats. The footage reached the part where Lu Wantang was going table to table for the toast. She had changed into a wine-red kipao, her hair pinned up, holding a wine glass and following beside me, toasting table after table. My eyes followed her figure moving through the frame, and then I noticed a detail. At the third table, Lu Wantang's steps suddenly faltered for a moment. The pause was incredibly subtle, maybe only half a second, completely unnoticeable without slow motion. But I froze the frame on that half second, zoomed in, and zoomed in again. The direction of her gaze was toward the table in the very far corner of the banquet hall.
That table had 7 or 8 people, all extra guests who had been squeezed in at the last minute before the wedding started.
The wedding planner had said a few guests who hadn't confirmed attendance suddenly showed up that day, so they added one more table. On the wedding day, I was so busy I didn't even notice who was sitting at that table. But now, zooming in on the image to carefully identify them, I saw a man in an iron gray suit sitting in the corner. Cheng Yanbei. He was sitting right there, holding a glass of red wine he had barely touched, his posture casual, his expression indifferent. He looked no different from any other guest. But if you looked closely at his eyes, his gaze was fixed on just one person the entire time.
Not on me, but on Lu Wantang.
I rewatched the entire toast segment from beginning to end and discovered a pattern that chilled me even more. Lu Wantang toasted 12 tables. At each table she was all smiles and perfect poise. But from beginning to end she never once glanced in the direction of that corner table.
Not a single glance.
This was no coincidence. A normal person toasting would naturally sweep their gaze across the room and inevitably have a moment or two where their eyes fell on that corner table.
But Lu Wantang didn't.
She precisely, deliberately, as if rehearsed countless times, avoided every angle where Cheng Yanbei was. She knew he was there. She knew the whole time. And Cheng Yanbei, from start to finish, sat in that corner like a quiet spectator, watching his lawful wife wearing a qipao, holding another man's arm, smiling radiantly at all the guests as she said, "Thank you all for coming to witness the happiness of Yubai and me." What kind of mindset was this?
A warning?
Surveillance? Or some kind of possessiveness I couldn't even understand? I pulled the progress bar further back, to the part near the end of the wedding. Guests were leaving one after another. I was standing at the door shaking hands and exchanging pleasantries. Lu Wantang was beside me, the smile on her face already a little tired. In the gap between one guest walking away from me and the next guest not yet approaching, I noticed an instant in the corner of the frame. Cheng Yanbei got up from his seat, walked out through the side door of the banquet hall, and as he passed behind Lu Wantang, his lips moved as if saying something to her. The sound wasn't recorded, but Lu Wantang's shoulders visibly stiffened. Then Cheng Yanbei disappeared. The entire sequence took no more than 5 seconds. I watched those 5 seconds over a dozen times, trying to read from Cheng Yanbei's lip movements what he had said. But the video resolution wasn't high enough, the distance too far. I could only tell it was a sentence of 3 or 4 words. 3 or 4 words. It wouldn't be come with me, because Lu Wantang didn't go with him. It wouldn't be it's over, because everything was just beginning. Suddenly, I remembered what Lu Wantang had said when she hugged me outside the Civil Affairs Bureau. No matter what happens in the future, remember, I truly love you. She was trembling all over when she said it. I thought at the time it was excitement, later thought it was fear, but if she knew on her wedding day that Cheng Yanbei was there, if she knew from the very first day she met me that she was walking a tightrope, then in all those moments she smiled at me, cooked for me, gently kissed my forehead after she thought I was asleep. How much unspeakable weight was she carrying in her heart? I turned off the TV and leaned back on the sofa, closing my eyes. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. It was an encrypted message from Lao Zhou. Zhao Qinian went to Dijiang Tower this afternoon. Stayed for an hour and a half before coming out. Also, regarding that tombstone for Shen Tingxi, you asked me to check. There's new info. The Shen Tingxi buried 20 years ago was the same age as Cheng Yanbei. If she were still alive, she would be 36 this year. 36. The same age as Cheng Yanbei. If what lay under that tombstone was an 8-year-old girl, then what was her relationship to Cheng Yanbei?
Why would Cheng Yanbei's father buy a burial plot for this girl?
And what was the connection between this dead Shen Tingxi and the Shen Tingxi identity that Lu Wantang was using? All these questions were tangled together like a knotted mess. Every knot I untied revealed a tighter, deeper snag beneath. But at least one thing was becoming clearer and clearer. Cheng Yanbei's obsession with Lu Wantang went far beyond a simple broken marriage. He said he paid a great price to pull her out of the mud. He said she is a knife. He sat in the corner at the wedding like a predator lying in wait. Everything he did pointed to one fact: Lu Wantang was holding something that made Cheng Yanbei lose sleep.
And that something was very likely hidden somewhere beyond that acquisition proposal under the closet panel.
Hidden in all the truths behind this Shen Tingxi identity that Lu Wantang hadn't had the chance to tell me yet. 2 days left.
She had said to wait 3 days.
Now there were 2 days left. I picked up my phone and opened the WeChat chat with Lu Wantang. The last message was still from the day we came back from the honeymoon. Hubby, I made sour plum soup for you. It's in the fridge. Remember to drink it. The weather is too hot.
With a heart emoji attached.
I scrolled up. 8 months of chat history, over 3,000 messages. Every single one was utterly ordinary. I typed a line, saw someone I shouldn't have in the wedding video today.
You owe me an explanation, Shen Tingxi.
I deleted it.
I tossed the phone onto the sofa and went to the kitchen to pour a glass of water. The moment the fridge door opened, I saw 6 bottles of sour plum soup neatly lined up inside. Each bottle was in a sealed glass jar, with a handwritten label: drink Monday, drink Tuesday, drink Wednesday, all the way to drink Saturday. Lu Wantang's handwriting, neat and pretty, not a single character out of place.
I closed the fridge door, leaned against the kitchen counter, and drank the glass of water.
Whatever her name was, whatever her original purpose for approaching me had been, all these small, concrete, irreplaceable things accumulated over these 8 months, I couldn't treat them as false. If, in the end, the facts proved I was truly wrong, then I would be wrong to the very end. But before that, I was going to take Cheng Yanbei off this chessboard first. Day 4, counting from the 48-hour deadline, Cheng Yanbei had given me 3.5 days had already passed. I had not replied to any of his messages during those 3 days. His assistant called me twice, and each time I gave the same answer. Still considering, Cheng Yanbei did not seem to be in a hurry, or perhaps he was simply too confident enough to believe that no normal person would choose to fight back inside his hunting net. But today was different. Today was the 3rd day Lu Wantang had mentioned in her email. She had said she would definitely come back in 3 days and explain everything to me. I had waited until now, and she had not appeared, nor was there any word from her. Since 8 o'clock that morning, I had been sitting on the living room sofa. 7 or 8 cigarette butts had piled up in the ashtray in front of me. My phone screen stayed lit on the coffee table, the volume turned all the way up. Lao Zhou called once in the middle of it to tell me that the activation procedures for the emergency trust had been completed. The 15% trust equity had officially been injected into my voting rights pool at Jiang Yu Group. The backgrounds of those two defecting board directors had also been thoroughly investigated. One had a son who ran up gambling debts in Macau and got caught by Dijiang Capital's people. The other was even simpler, bought outright by Cheng Yanbei with an offer of 20 million in cash, plus stock in a Dijiang subsidiary. Should we move against them? Lao Zhou asked.
Leave them be for now?
They still don't know that I know.
Pawns who don't realize they're pawns can often be the most useful in the end. After I hung up, I kept waiting. From morning to noon, from noon to afternoon, the sun outside the window moved from east to west, and the light and shadows on the living room floor shifted inch by inch. I even went to flip through Lu Wantang's wardrobe and took out the cream-colored knit cardigan she loved to wear. I looked at it for a long time. It still carried the faint fragrance of her laundry detergent. I folded the cardigan, put it back, and closed the wardrobe door. At exactly 4:17 in the afternoon, the phone finally rang. It was not a call, but a text message. The sender was a number I had never seen before, starting with an irregular string of digits that looked like a virtual number generated by an internet calling app. The content of the text was a string of completely random-looking characters. I stared at the combination of dots and dashes, and my heart suddenly raced. It was Morse code. 2 months ago, on a weekend, Lu Wantang and I had curled up at home watching an old spy movie. There was a scene in the film about transmitting messages with Morse code. After it ended, she suddenly got excited and dragged me into learning Morse code with her, saying it might come in handy someday. I had laughed at her wild imagination. Who in the modern world still used Morse code when you could just tap out a message on your phone? But she refused to let it go. She found a Morse code chart online, printed it out, and forced me to memorize it for an entire afternoon. Even though I never memorized all the letters in the end, the most common distress signals and number codes had been drilled into my head by her over and over again. She had said, "Remember, if one day I send you a message that looks like gibberish, that will definitely be me talking to you." I had thought at the time she was just playing a romantic game. Looking back now, she had never been playing a game at all. I found paper and a pen and, relying on the chart in my memory, began decoding the string of characters. The first word, HELP, help.
The second word, ME, me.
The part after that, B3, -3.
Next came FLOOR, floor.
And finally 3 to 6, 36. The entire message, strung together, came down to 5 words. Help me.
-3.
36. Jinyu Building, basement level 3, parking space number 36. When I spoke these words out loud, my voice sounded unusually loud in the empty living room. Jinyu Building was a property owned by Dijiang Capital on the west side of the city. It was not the main tower in the financial district, but a 20-story commercial office building, nominally held under a property management company beneath Dijiang's umbrella. Lao Zhou had mentioned this building when he was checking Dijiang's asset list, and I had not paid much attention at the time because it was simply too inconspicuous amid Dijiang's sprawling real estate portfolio.
But now I knew.
Cheng Yanbei had hidden Lu Wantang there, beneath Jinyu Building, basement level 3, next to parking space number 36. There had to be a space not marked on any public map. These old-style commercial building underground garages typically had equipment rooms or storage rooms, and with a bit of renovation, one could become a perfect hidden chamber. I called Lao Zhou. My speech was fast, but my voice was low. Lao Zhou, am sending the location to your phone. Jinyu Building, basement level 3, near parking space 36. Check the building plans for that tower, especially the structural drawings for the underground section. Also, prepare an inconspicuous car for me. Don't use a company plate.
Young President Jiang, are you going to go pick up my wife and bring her back?
Lao Zhou fell silent for 2 seconds, then said, "I'll go with you."
No.
Cheng Yanbei's eyes are fixed on my car and my phone signal.
If you come along, it'll only alert him.
I'll go alone.
You cover me from the outside. If I don't contact you within 2 hours, call the police directly. Don't dial 110. Call Captain Han of the Economic Crime Investigation Unit on his private number.
I saved it for you before.
Understood. I'll send the building plans to your phone right away.
Young President Jiang, Lao Zhou's voice hesitated. Be careful.
20 minutes later, I was driving a gray Passat that Lao Zhou had hastily picked up from the second-hand market, slipping out through the back gate of Biyun Bay. This car had out-of-town plates, deep-tinted windows, and rolling down the road it looked no different from any ordinary family sedan on the streets of Cloud City. I switched my phone to airplane mode and stuffed it into the glove compartment, keeping only a prepaid burner phone to stay in touch with Lao Zhou. The car pushed through the evening rush hour traffic. It took nearly 40 minutes to reach Jinyu Building on the west side of the city.
The building was even more desolate than I had imagined.
Most of the floors above ground were dark, only a few scattered windows lit with white light. I drove the car into the underground garage, spiraling down level by level. The tires rolled over the concrete floor with a muffled echo. A few cars were still parked on basement level 1. By basement level 2, only 2 or 3 remained. When I reached basement level 3, the whole space was clammy and cold. More than half the fluorescent tubes were broken. The few still working buzzed overhead, giving off a ghastly white light. I stopped the car right in front of parking space number 36. Space 36 was a corner spot against the wall, remote and squarely in a surveillance blind spot. Behind the parking space stood a gray concrete wall that looked no different from any other wall in the garage. But as I got closer, I spotted the telltale sign. There was a nearly invisible hidden door set into this wall, the seams filled with putty and painted over with a layer of gray paint. Without knowing its exact location in advance, you would never notice it even standing right in front of it. A brand new padlock hung on the handle of the hidden door. I took a crowbar from the trunk. Lao Zhao's building plans showed that behind this wall was an abandoned electrical distribution room, less than 15 square meters in size, windowless, with only a single ventilation pipe leading to the surface. This was where Cheng Yanbei had kept Lu Wantang locked up for 4 full days. I wedged the crowbar into the lock ring of the padlock and pried with all my strength. The lock cylinder snapped with a crisp crack. The moment I pushed the iron door open, a smell of dampness mixed with rust hit me in the face. Only one dim emergency light was on inside the room. Its orange glow barely illuminated a simple camp bed pushed against the wall.
Someone was curled up on the bed, draped in a man's jacket that clearly did not belong to her.
The arm that lay exposed was bruised all over, purple and black. Her hair was tangled messily across most of her face. At the sound of the door opening, she stirred and slowly raised her head. The dim emergency light fell on her face, and I got a clear look at it. A noticeable bruise marked her cheekbone. Her lips were dry and cracked and pale, but those eyes, the instant they saw me standing in the doorway, suddenly lit up, like someone who had been walking in darkness for far too long, finally seeing light. Lu Wantang Shen Tingxi, whatever her real name was, she looked at me standing at the door, and the corner of her mouth slowly, deliberately curved upwards.
You came at last.
Her voice was so hoarse it was barely audible, but every single word sounded as though it had been squeezed out from the very depths of her heart. I just knew you would crack those codes. I rushed over and helped her up.
The clothes on her body were damp and cold.
Her whole person felt as light as a piece of paper that could be blown away by the wind at any moment. There was a ring of obvious ligature marks around her wrist. The skin had been rubbed raw and formed dark red scabs. The bruise at the corner of her mouth extended down to her jaw. Clearly she had suffered plenty over the past few days.
Did he hit you?
I supported her as we walked out, unable to suppress the fury rising in my voice.
Not with his own hands,
Lu Wantang said, leaning on my shoulder, grimacing with pain with every step.
It was his men.
Cheng Yanbei never gets his own hands dirty. Not a trace of blood ever touches him. But hell have people watch you, 1 meal a day, no lights, no phone, never letting you know if it's day or night. He uses this method to make people crack. It's more convenient than using force. I helped her into the passenger seat of the Passat, fetched the first aid kit Lao Zhou had prepared in advance from the trunk, and twisted open a bottle of mineral water for her. She took it and had a small sip. When the water touched her lips, she winced in pain but still swallowed it down, sip by small sip. I took out the iodine swabs from the kit, lifted her wrist, and gently disinfected the wounds. Her fingers trembled slightly in my palm.
Why didn't you tell me earlier?
I kept my head down treating her wounds, not daring to look her in the eye. It was not anger, it was fear. Fear that the moment I looked into her eyes, I would go soft and be unable to ask any of the questions that needed asking. Lu Wantang leaned back in the seat and was silent for a moment. Then suddenly she laughed, a very soft laugh. There was no mockery in it whatsoever. It was just a deep, long-accumulated exhaustion finally being released. Because from start to finish, I didn't even know myself how to tell you this story, she said, turning her head to look at me. The emergency light filtering in from outside the car window cut a line of light and shadow across her face. But I promised you 3 days ago I would explain everything, so I'm telling you now. All of it. After you've heard it, you decide for yourself whether you want to drive this car straight to the police station. I said nothing. I simply tossed the bloodied swabs in my hand into a plastic bag and waited for her to speak.
My name is not Lu Wantang.
Of course, you already know that, she said, but I'm also not Shen Tingxi. The real Shen Tingxi died 20 years ago. She was 8 years old, the daughter of Cheng Boyuan's chauffeur. That year, a huge fire broke out at the old Cheng family mansion, and Shen Tingxi didn't make it out. Cheng Boyuan felt he owed the chauffeur's family a debt, so he bought a grave for that little girl, erected a tombstone, and went to burn paper offerings every Qingming festival. I only found out all this later, after I was forced to become Shen Tingxi.
Forced?
I seized on that word. Lu Wantang gathered her loose hair behind her ear, revealing her whole face. The garage was very quiet, so quiet that every word she spoke bounced back and forth several times against the concrete walls. My real name is Su Wan. Su as in the city Suzhou, Wan as in evening. Compared to the fake name Lu Wantang, only one character is different. You see, Cheng Yanbei couldn't even be bothered to put much thought into giving me a false name. Maybe he felt I wasn't worth the extra effort. Su Wan. I silently repeated the name in my mind and realized that the Wantang in Lu Wantang differed from Su Wan by only the tones of the last two characters. For 8 months, I had called her Wantang every single day, and her real name had been hiding inside those affectionate terms all along. I had just never discovered it.
I grew up in the Cheng household, she went on, but I wasn't part of the Cheng family.
My father was an accountant at Cheng Boyuan's company. He worked his way up from the ground level to chief financial officer and managed the Cheng family's books for 20 years. The core financial secrets of the Cheng family were all in my father's hands. The accounts of those offshore shell companies, the records of insider trading with the short-selling institutions, plus evidence of all the illegal methods the Cheng father and son had used in the course of their acquisitions. 2 years ago, my father was diagnosed with late-stage cancer. On his deathbed, he handed me an encrypted financial archive and told me, if the Cheng family ever dares to lay a finger on you, bring these things out. But if the Cheng family treats you well, take this archive with you to the grave.
And then?
My hand gripping the steering wheel unconsciously tightened, and then Cheng Yanbei found out about it. Lu Wantang closed her eyes and rested her head against the car window glass. I don't know through what channel, but he learned that my father had left me an archive. So he came up with a plan that in his eyes was flawless. He married me. A year ago, he knelt in front of me with a 6-carat diamond ring and proposed. What he said wasn't "I love you." It was "Marry me, and the secrets your father left behind will forever remain secrets. I won't touch you, and I won't touch those things either." Inside the garage, that broken fluorescent tube suddenly flickered, making a sizzling electric sound. I could hear my own heartbeat with extraordinary clarity in the silence of that enclosed space. He knew what was in my father's archive. Lu Wantang opened her eyes. Her eye rims were red, but no tears fell. Her voice was, if anything, steadier than before. That archive contained records not of simple tax evasion, but the truth behind 3 deaths that had been ruled suicides of business rivals that the Cheng father and son had been involved in over a span of 20 years. Do you understand? Not jumping from a building, not a car crash, but I know. You don't need to say it aloud. I cut her off, my throat so dry it ached. Lao Zhou had mentioned that among those company founders swallowed by Dijiang, 3 had died under highly similar circumstances. All had been found dead of sudden causes in their cars, offices, or homes shortly after signing transfer agreements. The coroner's verdicts were uniformly sudden cardiac death, but none of the 3 had any prior history of heart disease. Cheng Yanbei married me to keep me firmly under his control, to guarantee that archive would never be opened. Lu Wantang's fingers unconsciously clutched the jacket draped over her lap, her knuckles white, and I married him because under the circumstances at that time I had no other path. I was just an ordinary girl who studied finance, both parents dead, clutching secrets that could blow half of Cloud City's business world sky high, facing the network and dark empire the Cheng father and son had spent decades building. If I didn't marry him, I would not have lived through the month.
Then why did you get to know me?
The moment this question left my mouth, I realized my own voice was trembling a little. Lu Wantang turned her head and looked at me. The emotions in those eyes were so complex I could not read them all. There was guilt, gratitude, a kind of deep affection that had been suppressed for too long, and a hint of stubbornness that I could not quite name. 3 months later, Cheng Yanbei began planning the takeover of Jiang Yu Group. It was a bone his father had gnawed on for a decade without ever cracking, because Jiang Heading was just too hard to deal with. His connections in the business world, his methods, his wariness of the Cheng father and son, all of it kept Dijiang Capital from finding a breakthrough. But Jiang Heading died 2 years ago, and Jiang Yu fell into your hands. Cheng Yanbei figured you were just a young man under 30. Dealing with you would be 100 times easier than dealing with your grandfather.
So he sent you to get close to me?
I asked. It wasn't him who sent me. I volunteered. Lu Wantang said this while looking straight into my eyes without flinching. Cheng Yanbei needed someone who could get close to you, someone who could earn your trust. He thought I was the perfect candidate. I was his wife, under his control, and I'd studied finance, so I could understand business documents. He thought I was a chess piece completely held in the palm of his hand.
Then why did you volunteer?
Lu Wantang was silent for a few seconds. Somewhere in the garage, a water droplet fell, tapping rhythmically against the concrete floor, because by then, I was already looking for a way to escape him. The archive my father left me was fake, or rather, the real archive I had hidden somewhere else. What I handed over to Cheng Yanbei was a doctored version with several pieces of his most damning evidence removed. I told him the real archive was in a place only I knew, and that if I ever died, that archive would automatically be sent to the police and the media. So he didn't dare truly harm me. He could only keep me under his watch. But I knew that wasn't a long-term solution. I needed to find a breakthrough, a force strong enough to stand against the Cheng family, an opportunity that would let me break free from this cage. She paused, looked at me, and her voice suddenly became very soft, as light as a feather landing on water. So I accepted his assignment. He said, get close to Jiang Yubai of Jiang Yu Group, earn his trust, and obtain the core valuation data for Jiang Yu Green Energy. I said okay. But what I was thinking in my heart was something else entirely. Jiang Yubai is the grandson of Jiang Heading, the only person in Cloud City with a clean background, strong enough resources, and sufficient reason to stand against Dijiang Capital. If I could earn his trust, if he could believe me, even if in the end he could never forgive me, at least the resources in his hands and the cards the Jiang family had left behind would be more than enough to send Cheng Yanbei and his father in together. The broken fluorescent tube in the garage finally went completely dark, plunging the entire basement level 3 into deeper gloom. Only the faint glow of the car's dashboard reflected on our faces, like two people exchanging secrets in the dark of night. So from the very start, it was all a calculation, I said, taking my hands off the steering wheel and resting them on my knees, so no one could see them clench into fists. I was nothing but in the beginning. Yes, Lu Wantang cut me off. She reached out the hand I had bandaged and her fingertips lightly, tentatively brushed the back of my hand, then withdrew as though afraid of being burned.
But do you remember what I said to you?
That line at the entrance of the Civil Affairs Bureau, that was the truest sentence I have ever spoken in my life.
I don't know at which exact moment it started.
Maybe it was when you blocked a drink for me at that cocktail party. Maybe it was the rainy day you took off your jacket and draped it over me. Maybe it was when you took me to visit your grandfather's grave, and you knelt on the stone slab with red-rimmed eyes but stubbornly pretended everything was fine. All these things, accumulated over these 8 months, turned Suwan into Lu Wantang.
She said nothing more.
The car fell quiet, broken only by the low-frequency hum of the distant ventilation duct. I started the engine. The low growl of the motor echoed through the empty underground garage.
Let's go home first, I said, turning the wheel to back the car out of parking space 36.
Shower, change your clothes, eat something. Everything you've said, I believe it, but I need time to process it. As for Cheng Yanbei, I drove the car up the ramp of the underground garage. Natural light from the exit on the ground floor poured in, so bright it made us squint.
What I'm going to do tomorrow has nothing to do with the 48 hours he gave me anymore.
The next morning, 9 o'clock in the large conference room on the 26th floor of Jiang Yu Group's headquarters. Outside the window stretched the skyline of Cloud City's CBD. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling glass and spread a layer of gold over the dark conference table. This was supposed to be an ordinary quarterly board meeting, but everyone present could feel the unusual tension in the air, because on the 3 empty seats to the right of the conference table lay 3 temporary shareholder representative authorization letters that had arrived without any advance notice. The signatories were Cheng Yanbei, the legal representative of Dijiang Capital, and the 2 lawyers he had brought with him. They were coming with hostile intent. When the conference room door was pushed open, Cheng Yanbei walked at the very front. Today he wore a black 3-piece suit with a silver brooch pinned to his chest. His whole presence was even more sharply aggressive than when I had seen him at Dijiang Tower. Behind him followed 2 lawyers in suits, one carrying a security briefcase, the other clutching a thick stack of documents under his arm, full of swagger. Chairman Jiang, forgive the intrusion. Cheng Yanbei pulled out a chair and sat down with the air of a host.
He even skipped the polite pleasantries.
According to Article 14, Section 2 of Jiang Yu Group's Articles of Association, a shareholder holding more than 5% equity in a subsidiary company has the right to sit in on the parent company's board meetings and may express opinions on relevant matters. I am here today in my capacity as an indirect shareholder of 3 of Jiang Yu's subsidiaries to observe this board meeting.
Any objections?
A few of the old directors at the table looked at each other, whispering in low voices. Zhao Qinyan, sitting to my left, wore a subtle expression. The corner of his mouth was slightly upturned, but not so much that anyone could interpret it as schadenfreude. His all things to all people demeanor looked especially jarring inside this conference room.
No objections, I said, leaning back in my chair, my tone as flat as if we were discussing the weather.
Since President Cheng is here, it so happens that today's board meeting has a temporary agenda item that concerns Dijiang Capital.
Why don't we get straight to the point?
Cheng Yanbei's brow twitched, but this tiny reaction was suppressed in less than a second. With a gesture, he had the lawyer behind him pull a beautifully bound document from the security briefcase and push it in front of me. Before that, allow me to present Chairman Jiang and the board directors with a legal opinion, Cheng Yanbei said, folding his hands on the table and sweeping his eyes around everyone present.
Lu Wantang, that is, Shen Tingshi, currently holds approximately 0.8% equity in Jiang Yu Group in her name.
While the percentage is not large, according to Jiang Yu's articles of association, any shareholder facing a major conflict of interest has the right to demand the board suspend voting on related resolutions. I am here today to exercise the voting rights attached to this portion of equity on behalf of Shen Tingxi in my capacity as her lawful spouse.
Lawful spouse.
Lao Zhou, seated at the far end of the conference table, pushed his glasses up and spoke with undisguised sarcasm. President Cheng, as far as I'm aware, during the period your marriage to Ms. Shen Tingxi has been in existence, Ms. Shen has already registered a marriage with Chairman Jiang.
This status of yours as the lawful spouse, I'm afraid it doesn't hold water, does it?
Cheng Yanbei's lawyer immediately jumped in, speaking very fast, as though the lines had been rehearsed long beforehand.
Mr.
Zhou, according to Article 1049 of the Civil Code, a bigamous marriage is void from its inception.
That means the marriage between Mr.
Jiang Yubai and Ms. Shen Tingxi has no legal standing whatsoever.
Ms.
Cheng Yanbei's marriage registration with Ms.
Shen Tingxi predates it, and to this day no divorce procedures have been carried out.
Therefore, Mr. Cheng remains Ms.
Shen's sole lawful spouse.
Here are the relevant certified documents issued by the Civil Affairs Bureau. The lawyer slapped a document stamped with a red official seal onto the table. Silence fell over the conference room for about 3 seconds. The gazes several directors directed at me now held something I could not quite read. There was sympathy, pity, and 1 or 2 who could not hide a certain schadenfreude. Zhao Qinyan coughed lightly, lifted the water glass in front of him, took a sip, and let his gaze drift out the window, putting on the appearance of staying completely above it all. Cheng Yanbei leaned back in his chair, his expression as composed as if he were playing a game of chess he was already certain to win. The way he looked at me carried a trace of mockery, that assured, looking down from above expression that seemed to have already written my ending in his mind, exactly the same expression he had worn when looking at me in his office 4 days ago. President Cheng, you just cited the Civil Code's provisions on bigamy, I said, slowly straightening up in my seat. I picked up that lawyer's opinion, flipped through it casually for a couple of pages, then set it aside like a worthless advertising flyer. But you seem to have overlooked Article 258 of the Criminal Code. Whoever has a spouse and commits bigamy, or marries another person, knowing that person already has a spouse, shall be sentenced to fixed-term imprisonment of not more than 2 years or criminal detention. Cheng Yanbei's smile froze for a split second, but he recovered very quickly. Chairman Jiang, I'm well aware of that law you mention. The problem is, at the time you registered your marriage with Shen Tingxi, you did not know she already had a spouse. Therefore, criminal liability does not fall on you. As for Shen Tingxi, she may indeed have to bear some legal consequences, which is precisely why I am exercising her shareholder rights on her behalf today. She herself is currently inconvenienced and cannot attend.
Inconvenienced?
I let out a laugh, picked up the remote control on the table, and pressed a button. The largest projection screen in the conference room slowly descended. The electric blackout blinds on the windows automatically closed, and the light in the room dimmed. The projector powered on, showing a media player interface on the screen.
I pressed play.
Why don't we first take a look at where exactly this Miss
Shen Yusei is inconvenienced really is right now, and who got her into such a state. The video began to play. The footage showed the interior of that abandoned electrical distribution room in basement level 3 of Jinyu building. The camera was a bit shaky shot on a phone, but the image quality was clear enough. In the center of the frame was a camp bed, and on the bed was Lu Wantang, or what Cheng Yanbei called Shen Tingxi, her hair disheveled, bruises and dried blood at the corner of her mouth, her wrists wrapped in bandages that had already turned black. She spoke into the camera, her voice hoarse but every word spoken with absolute clarity. My name is Su Wan. Su as in Suzhou, Wan as in evening. Since May of last year, I have been forced by Cheng Yanbei into a marriage under duress. He exploited my concerns over my father's belongings to keep me confined at multiple locations across Cloud City. In mid-August of this year, he demanded that I approach Jiang Yubai, chairman of Jiang Yu Group, under the false identity of Lu Wantang, with the aim of stealing Jiangyu Green Energy's trade secrets to pave the way for Dijiang Capital's hostile takeover. The injuries on my body were inflicted by Cheng Yanbei's subordinates under his instruction, with the purpose of forcing me to sign a notarized document acknowledging that I am Shen Tingxi and authorizing him full power to manage all assets under my name. I am recording this video of my own free will. Everything I have stated is true, and I am willing to bear the corresponding legal responsibility for every single word. The footage cut to a close-up of a document. It was the prenuptial property agreement Cheng Yanbei had signed with Su Wan in May of last year. Article 7, highlighted in bold, read, Party B voluntarily waives the right to be informed of and the right to make claims upon all properties and equity holdings of Party A. The final freeze frame showed Su Wan holding the original of this agreement up to the camera, with Cheng Yanbei's handwritten signature clearly visible on the lower right corner of every page. The video finished playing. The conference room was so silent you could hear the faint sound of airflow from the central air conditioning vents. Every trace of composure had vanished from Cheng Yanbei's face. He stared at that bolded clause frozen on the projection screen, his eyes shifting from disbelief to icy cold, and from icy cold to something nearing violence. The two lawyers behind him exchanged a glance, and both fell silent. President Cheng, I switched off the projector. The blackout blinds rose again, sunlight flooding back into the conference room, illuminating Cheng Yanbei's face, now rigid and ashen. You just said you wanted to exercise shareholder rights on behalf of your spouse. Then allow me to ask, is that duress clause mentioned by Ms. Su Wan in this video enough to put a question mark over your status as her lawful spouse? Furthermore, holding another person against their will for 4 full days and instructing others to cause bodily harm, are those actions enough to warrant a police investigation? This is all just your one-sided story, plus a video that can be easily forged. Cheng Yanbei's voice sank low, but his pace of speech had noticeably slowed, clearly recalculating the situation. Every word Su Wan says in that video lacks corroboration. As for the injuries on her body, who can prove I instructed them? She could have perfectly well self-harmed to frame me.
You want evidence?
I nodded, as if I had long anticipated he would say exactly that.
Then I'll give you evidence.
I nodded toward Lao Zhou. Lao Zhou stood up and drew out a thick stack of materials from a document pouch, placing them one by one onto the conference table. He announced the content of each in a loud voice. Injury examination report issued by Cloud City No. 2 People's Hospital. Time of admission 7:40 this morning. Injury assessment graded as minor injuries. Estimated time of infliction approximately 72 hours ago. Lease agreement between Dijiang Capital's property management subsidiary and Jinyu Building, plus the renovation expense reimbursement form for that electrical distribution room next to parking space. 36. The signatory is President Cheng's executive assistant, a Mr.
Chen.
Phone call records list for Mr. Chen, showing that over the past week, this number called the property manager of Jinyu Building a total of 47 times. Material after material piled up on the table, and with every new piece, Cheng Yanbei's expression darkened another shade. The other directors in the room could no longer bother with whispered murmurs. All eyes were fixed wide on these documents. Even Zhao Qinian set down his glass, his face turning subtly uneasy. In addition, Lao Zhou pulled out the final item, a black USB drive. This contains 3 audio recordings, capturing 3 phone calls made by President Cheng's men while they were detaining Ms.
Su Wan.
In one of those calls, the man explicitly says, President Cheng said she can't die, but she can be made to suffer a little. Shall we play them openly here at the board meeting? Cheng Yanbei shot to his feet. His chair slid backward and slammed into the wall panel behind him with a dull thud. His fingers pressed against the edge of the conference table, his knuckles white from the force. He looked down at the materials scattered across the table, then raised his head to look at me. His eyes had changed, no longer the confidence and mockery, but a belated, dawning fury, the kind that comes only after you realize you've been bitten back. Jiang Yubai, he squeezed my name out through gritted teeth. Do you even know who you're playing games with? Cheng Yanbei, I stood up as well, facing him across the 3-meter-long conference table. 4 days ago in your office, you said something to me.
You said Shen Tingshi is a knife, and you weren't sure whether this knife would end up stabbing you or stabbing me.
Now, giving you the answer, this knife has stabbed you.
And the hand holding the handle was never yours from the very beginning. Cheng Yanbei stared at me and was silent for a very long time. Everyone in the conference room held their breath. Not a single person dared make a sound. The 2 lawyers had already quietly put that notarized document back inside their security briefcase, their movements careful and cautious, as if afraid that any tiny sound they made might set something off.
Fine, Cheng Yanbei suddenly laughed.
That laugh was unlike any of his previous smiles, not confidence, not mockery, but the fierce grin of a man pushed to the wall deciding to flip the entire table, teetering on the edge of losing control.
Jiang Yubai, you are indeed a little smarter than I thought.
But you've forgotten one thing. He turned and strode toward the conference room door, shoving the heavy wooden double doors open with a push. From the hallway outside came the sound of orderly footsteps. 6 or 7 men dressed in black suits filed out of the stairwell, each carrying a metal case roughly the size of a briefcase. The man at the front walked straight into the conference room, placed the case on the table, and opened it. Inside was a thick stack of bound English-language documents. The header on the top page bore the logo of a globally renowned credit rating agency. This is a draft of the rating report freshly released this morning. The lead man announced loudly in perfect Mandarin, as if making some kind of proclamation to the entire room. Based on the negative public opinion surrounding Chairman Jiang's suspected bigamy, and the risk of a hostile takeover facing Jiangyu Green Energy, the rating agency has decided to downgrade Jiangyu Group's corporate credit rating from AAA to BBB, with the outlook adjusted to negative. The conference room exploded. Several directors jumped to their feet at the same time, crowding around me in a flurry of agitated voices. Chairman Jiang, what is the meaning of this? A rating downgrade means the interest on our overseas bonds will skyrocket. The 3 financing tranches maturing next month will all be affected.
Who can shoulder this responsibility?
Cheng Yanbei walked back into the conference room and sat down in the same chair as before, crossing one leg over the other, resuming that condescending posture. The 6 or 7 men he had brought lined up in a row behind him, a dark mass that indeed carried an intimidating force.
Jiang Yubai, Cheng Yanbei's tone was leisurely, as if he were slowly savoring an elaborately prepared dish. The video you just showed, who exactly caused the injuries on Suwan's body? A police investigation into that sort of thing will take at least a month or 2.
But a credit rating downgrade, this will be announced on the Bloomberg terminal this very afternoon. By tomorrow at the latest, investors worldwide will know. Guess what will happen to Jiangyu's stock price when the market opens tomorrow?
Down 10%?
20%?
Or will it hit the daily limit down directly? My hands clenched into fists under the table. To be honest, I had not anticipated this move from Cheng Yanbei. He had not come to reason with me, nor to fight a legal battle. From the very beginning, he had prepared 2 sets of tactics. If the soft approach failed, he would use the hard. If he could not stand on legal ground, he would use the pressure of the capital markets to roll right over me. So what you're saying, I said, doing my best to keep my voice steady, is that if I don't cooperate, you'll use this rating report to smash Jiangyu to rock bottom? Cooperate is too polite a word. Cheng Yanbei leaned forward, propped his hands on the conference table, and stood up, looking down at me from the angle of a predator eyeing its prey. I want you to sign this equity transfer agreement right now. Jiangyu Green Energy, 51% controlling stake, transferred to Dijiang Capital. In exchange, I will have the rating agency retract this report, saying the draft contained data errors and needs to be re-reviewed. The review period will take about 3 to 5 months. That much time should be more than enough for you to sort out your financing issues. He pulled a new agreement from his briefcase and spread it open in front of me. It was even harsher than the version from 4 days ago. The equity percentage demanded had jumped from the original 1/3 to 51%, and the price had been pressed down from 60% of market valuation straight to 40%. I'll give you 3 minutes. Cheng Yanbei raised his wrist to look at his watch, a Patek Philippe, the diamonds on the dial glinting coldly under the lights. In 3 minutes, the rating report will be officially dispatched from the Hong Kong Bureau's email. By then, even if you sign, it will be too late. The conference room fell so silent that all you could hear was the ticking of the second hand on the wall clock. Tick, tick, tick. Everyone's eyes were focused on me. Zhao Qinian finally stopped pretending. The smirk at the corner of his mouth could no longer be concealed at all. He leaned back in his chair comfortably, as if enjoying a play whose ending he had long known. I lowered my head to glance at the agreement on the table, then looked up at Cheng Yanbei. Then I did something no one expected. I reached my hand under the conference table and pressed the emergency button that Lao Zhou had installed in advance. This button was directly connected to the security office on the ground floor of Jiang Yu Group's headquarters, the Economic Crime Investigation Unit of the Cloud City Public Security Bureau, and a server set up to send out mass messages. The instant the signal was sent, all exits locked simultaneously, and the security system for the entire building entered the highest level of emergency lockdown. The conference room door was pushed open again. But this time, it was not Cheng Yanbei's men who walked in. Walking in the very front were three people I had met before. The first was Gu Chenghe. He came in pushed by a caregiver in his wheelchair, but those eyes in his gaunt face had never been so bright. The second was that accountant's surnamed son with the thick glasses, his arms hugging a file pouch stuffed so full it was bursting. The third was a woman in her 50s holding high an enlarged black and white photograph. The photo showed a middle-aged man standing under a company sign and smiling brilliantly. That company was called Hangtong Medical Equipment, the one Dijiang Capital had swallowed 3 years ago. Behind these three, 10 more people followed, then 20 more and more people flooding into the conference room, surrounding Cheng Yanbei's 6 or 7 black suits in a tight ring. Every single person held something in their hands. Some held documents, some held photographs, and some held court notices of acceptance. The last to walk in was a man in a dark blue uniform with the insignia of the Economic Crime Investigation Unit on his shoulder. His name was Han Su, deputy head of the Economic Crime Investigation Unit of the Cloud City Public Security Bureau. Jiang Yu Group had once done a favor for him back when my grandfather was alive, a favor I had never called in since taking over Jiang Yu.
Mr.
Cheng Yanbei. Han Su walked up to the conference table and held out his identification along with a summons notification stamped with a red seal based on the evidentiary materials currently gathered by the public security authorities. You are suspected, in the course of multiple acquisitions carried out by Dijiang Capital over the past 3 years, of engaging in contract fraud and commercial bribery through illegal short selling, fabrication of financial data, threats, and intimidation. Here is the summons notification. Please cooperate with the investigation. In addition, Han Su turned around and glanced at the man in the black suit beside Cheng Yanbei, who was holding the rating report.
You'd better not send that report in your hand just yet.
Our Economic Crime Investigation Unit is currently conducting a cross-border joint investigation with relevant overseas financial regulatory bodies. The matter of Dijiang Capital manipulating a rating agency through offshore shell companies has already been included within the scope of the investigation. Every single report you send out right now may well become evidence presented in court in the future. Cheng Yanbei's lawyer instinctively snatched that draft rating report out of the black-suited man's hand. The conference room suddenly fell into an almost surreal silence. Those directors who had been buzzing around me in noisy complaint moments before were now all struck dumb, like a flock of geese suddenly grabbed by the throat. The smirk on Zhao Qinian's face froze completely. His lips moved as if he wanted to say something, but after meeting my gaze, he swallowed his words back down. The color on Cheng Yanbei's face went from ashen gray to stark white. He stared at the summons notification in Han Su's hand for a full 10 seconds, then slowly, methodically folded the equity transfer agreement on the table and put it back into his briefcase. The action was very slow, so slow it seemed like he was completing some sort of ritual. The moment when a man who believed he controlled everything finally realized he had lost all his cards.
President Cheng, I walked around the conference table and stood in front of him.
My voice was not loud, but every word was clear. 4 days ago in your office, you used a phrase with me. You said Shen Tingshi was someone you pulled out of the mud at great cost. Now I'm returning that phrase to you. No matter how great a cost you spend, you won't pull her back. Because from start to finish, you got one thing completely wrong. She was never yours.
She never was.
Cheng Yanbei did not respond. The 2 officers behind Han Su stepped forward and stood to his left and right, their gestures polite but their attitude firm, signaling him to go with them. Just as Cheng Yanbei was being led out of the conference room, one more person walked in through the door.
Lu Wantang Suwan wore a simple white blouse.
Most of the bruises on her face were covered by light makeup. Her hair was tied back in a low ponytail, and she stood very straight. When she walked in, every gaze in the conference room fell upon her. Those gazes held scrutiny, curiosity, and a faint, unspoken awe. She paid no attention to anyone else and walked directly up to me. Naturally, as if she had done it 1,000 times, she reached out and took my arm. Her body warmth came through the fabric of her blouse, carrying a long-missed, solid sense of reassurance. From the very beginning to the very end, the person I bet on was you. She tilted her head to look at me. Her voice was not loud, but her tone was as calm as if she were stating a fact that time had already proven true. From the very first moment I saw you at that cocktail party, you blocked that drink for me. Just like your grandfather, you're someone who at your core can never stand by and watch the weak get hurt. I bet you would come to save me.
I bet you would believe me.
I bet you would win.
I looked down at her face.
On that face were bruises, exhaustion, nearly all the strength that had been worn away during those 4 days in the underground garage. But her gaze was steady, like a ship that had weathered the storm and finally moored safely in the harbor.
You won the bet, I said, my throat a little dry.
But next time, don't gamble with your own life. Playing those games of life and death with someone like Cheng Yanbei is not worth it. Su-wan smiled. That smile held the relief of a narrow escape, and also a kind of complete, wholehearted release I had never seen on her face before. She did not answer, she only tightened the hand that was holding my arm. Inside the conference room, Lao Zhou had already begun organizing the directors to leave one after another. Gu Changhei's wheelchair had been pushed over to the window, and he was handing the materials he had guarded for 3 years, one piece after another, to the economic crime investigation officers to be registered. The accountant's surnamed son was crouched on the floor, sorting the contents of his file pouch into categories, muttering under his breath. Outside the window, Cloud City's skyline was still as beautiful as ever, sunlight reflecting off the glass curtain walls of the CBD in vast sheets of gold, as though everything that had just happened was nothing more than another ordinary storm inside this steel jungle. But in my heart, I knew that for Jiang Yu Group, for Su-wan, for me after today, the sun would rise as usual, but very many things would never be the same again. Zhao Qinian was the last to walk out of the conference room. As he passed by me, his steps hesitated for a moment. He opened his mouth as though he wanted to say something. I did not give him the chance to speak. I only said 4 words flatly, "Uncle Zhao, take care." The muscles on his face twitched, and then he walked away without looking back. I knew this man would never appear in my sight again, at least not for a very long time. The ways of the business world needed no extra words from me. He understood perfectly well in his own heart. The conference room was completely empty now. Beyond the floor-to-ceiling glass windows on the 26th floor, Cloud City spread out its vast and bustling panorama under the midday sun. Su-wan stood by the window, looking outside, saying nothing, just standing there quietly. The sunlight traced the outline of her profile. That small mole beneath her right eye was as familiar as ever. I walked over and stood beside her.
"What happens next?" she asked.
"First, let your injuries heal," I said. "Then you'll need to go give a complete statement to the Economic Crime Unit. Tell them everything about what Cheng Boyuan and Cheng Yanbei, father and son, have done from beginning to end. I've already got a lawyer for you, a former partner of my grandfather's, the best criminal defense attorney in Cloud City." "That's not what I'm asking." Su-wan turned her head to look at me, her eyes earnest. "I'm asking about you and me."
Will you still trust me?
I looked at her and did not answer right away. Outside the window, a flock of pigeons flew past, the flapping of their wings faintly audible through the glass.
Su-wan. I spoke her real name for the first time.
The 2 syllables, coming out of my mouth, felt unfamiliar yet true. 8 months ago, when you walked toward me at that cocktail party, what were you really thinking? She was silent for a moment, then said, "What I was thinking was, this person looks like a good man.
I can't let Cheng Yanbei destroy him."
"Then that's enough," I said. "As for the rest, we have all the time in the world to settle it properly." Su-wan paused, then smiled. It was not the kind of smile that carefully controlled its measure. Not the trained, flawless, perfectly appropriate smile. It was a real, genuine smile, the kind that reddens the rims of your eyes. She leaned a step closer and rested her forehead against my shoulder, just as she had on countless ordinary nights before. Behind us, the conference room door gently closed. From the hallway came the voices of the economic crime officers counting materials, the ding-dong of the elevator opening and closing, the hum of the printer working. All these sounds wove together, like the end credits rolling slowly across the screen when a long, long movie finally comes to its conclusion. And I knew this was not the end. This was the opening of another film. I reached out and switched off the lights in the conference room. Outside the window, Cloud City's skyline glittered under the blazing midday sun. A new story was only just beginning.